You've felt it. That strange pull to cancel plans, even though you desperately crave connection. That urge to ghost someone who actually cares about you. That voice whispering you're better off alone, even as loneliness is killing you from the inside. What if I told you this isn't weakness? It's your brain following ancient programming that once kept you alive, but now traps you in a cage of your own making. Sarah was 28 when she realized she hadn't had a real conversation in 3 months. Not at work, where she smiled through meetings. Not with her family, who she texted but never called. Not even with her roommate, despite living 15 feet apart. She had 847 friends on social media. She had 0 people who knew what kept her awake at night. And the strangest part? She was the one pushing everyone away. This is the loneliness paradox, and it's destroying millions of people right now. Here's what most people don't understand about loneliness. It's not about being alone. You can be surrounded by people and feel completely isolated. You can have a partner sleeping next to you and feel like you're on a desert island. Because loneliness isn't a circumstantial problem. It's a neurological trap that your own brain creates, reinforces, and then refuses to let you escape. Let me explain the dark psychology behind this. When you experience loneliness, your brain doesn't register it as an emotion. It registers it as a threat. Neuroscientists at the University of Chicago discovered that chronic loneliness activates the same neural pathways as physical pain. Your anterior cingulate cortex lights up exactly the way it does when you touch a hot stove or break a bone. Your brain is literally screaming that you're in danger. But here's where it gets sinister. When your brain detects this threat, it doesn't push you toward connection. It does the exact opposite. It triggers your hypervigilance system, the same ancient mechanism that kept your ancestors alive when they were expelled from their tribe and had to survive alone in a hostile environment. Your brain shifts into threat detection mode. Suddenly, every social interaction feels dangerous. That invitation to coffee? Your brain sees potential rejection. That text from a friend? Your brain searches for hidden criticism. That person trying to get close to you? Your brain labels them as a threat to your emotional safety. This is why Sarah started canceling plans. Not because she didn't want connection, but because her brain had recategorized all human interaction as dangerous. The neuroscience is brutal. When you're lonely, your amygdala, your brain's fear center, becomes hyperactive. At the same time, your prefrontal cortex, the part that helps you accurately read social cues, starts shutting down. You become worse at interpreting facial expressions. You misread neutral comments as hostile. You see rejection where none exists. Dr. John Cacioppo, who spent decades studying loneliness, called this the loneliness loop. Loneliness makes you hypersensitive to social threat. This hypersensitivity makes you withdraw or behave defensively. This withdrawal deepens your loneliness, which makes you even more hypersensitive. It's a neurological death spiral, but it gets darker. Your brain doesn't just make you paranoid, it actually changes your personality to keep you isolated. Research from UCLA found that chronically lonely people develop what psychologists call rejection sensitivity. You start preemptively rejecting others before they can reject you. You ghost people who care about you. You sabotage relationships that could save you. You pick fights with people who are trying to help. Not because you want to be alone, but because your brain has decided that connection is too dangerous to risk. Sarah experienced this firsthand. When her best friend from college reached out after months of silence, Sarah's first thought wasn't gratitude, it was suspicion. What does she want? Why now? She's probably just being polite. So Sarah responded with a cold, brief text that effectively ended the conversation. Later, alone in her apartment, she couldn't understand why she'd done it. She wanted connection desperately, but something inside her had pressed the self-destruct button. That something was her brain's threat detection system, now completely miscalibrated. Here's the evolutionary logic behind this madness. 10,000 years ago, if your tribe expelled you, friendliness could get you killed. Other tribes were dangerous. Strangers were threats. Your ancestors who survived exile were the ones who became hypervigilant, suspicious, and self-reliant. They were the ones whose brains learned to treat all social interaction as potentially lethal. Your brain still carries that programming, and when modern loneliness triggers it, you don't become your best self. You become your most primitive self, the version designed to survive total isolation in a prehistoric wilderness. The physical effects are terrifying. Loneliness doesn't just hurt emotionally, it literally destroys your body from the inside out. Studies show that chronic loneliness increases your risk of early death by 26%. That's equivalent to smoking 15 cigarettes a day. It increases your risk of dementia by 64%. It doubles your risk of type 2 diabetes. It accelerates cellular aging at the genetic level, shortening your telomeres, the protective caps on your DNA, faster than almost any other stressor. Your immune system collapses. Lonely people have higher levels of cortisol, the stress hormone that, in chronic doses, literally shrinks your hippocampus, your brain's memory center. Your inflammation markers skyrocket. Your cardiovascular system deteriorates. Sleep becomes fragmented and unrestorative because your brain won't let you fully rest. It's still scanning for threats, even in your dreams. Sarah started getting sick constantly. Colds that wouldn't go away, headaches that lasted for days, exhaustion that no amount of sleep could fix. She thought she just had a weak immune system. She had no idea that her loneliness was eating her alive at the cellular level. But here's what makes this truly dark. Your brain interprets all of this physical deterioration as confirmation that you should stay isolated. You feel tired, so you cancel plans. You feel sick, so you avoid social situations. You feel foggy and disconnected, so conversations feel like climbing a mountain. And every time you withdraw, your brain rewards you with a small hit of relief. See, it whispers, you're safer alone. This creates what psychologists call learned helplessness. You try to connect, and it feels terrible. You withdraw, and you feel brief relief. Your brain learns that isolation equals safety, even though isolation is literally killing you. The social media trap makes everything worse. We've created a world where you can feel connected without ever actually connecting. You can scroll through hundreds of lives, consume endless content, maintain the appearance of a social life, all while never experiencing genuine intimacy. Sarah spent 3 hours a day on Instagram. She liked photos, she commented on posts, she watched stories. She felt like she was participating in social life. But her brain knew the truth. These weren't real connections. They were parasocial relationships, one-way streets that provided the illusion of connection without any of the actual neurological benefits. Real connection requires vulnerability. It requires risk. It requires the possibility of rejection. Social media offers none of that. It offers carefully curated highlight reels, performative authenticity, and the constant comparison that makes you feel even more inadequate and alone. And here's the cruelest trick. Social media activates your brain's reward system just enough to take the edge off your loneliness, but not enough to actually satisfy your need for connection. It's like being desperately thirsty and drinking salt water. It feels like relief in the moment, but it's actually making you more desperate. Neuroscientist Matthew Lieberman discovered that our brains have a default network, the neural activity that kicks in when we're not focused on external tasks. For most of human history, this default network made us think about people, our relationships, our tribe. Social connection was literally our brain's resting state. But in chronically lonely people, this network rewires itself. Instead of thinking about connection, you start ruminating, obsessing over past failures, catastrophizing about future rejection. Your brain's default state becomes negative self-talk, not social thinking. This is why loneliness becomes a personality trait, not just a temporary state. Your brain physically restructures itself around isolation. So how do you break the cycle? How do you escape a trap that your own neurology has built around you? The answer is both simple and incredibly difficult. You have to do the thing your brain is screaming at you not to do. You have to reach out despite the fear. You have to stay present despite the urge to flee. You have to risk connection despite your hyperactive threat detection system telling you it's dangerous. But here's the key insight. You can't think your way out of loneliness. Your prefrontal cortex, your logical brain, is compromised. You can't reason with your amygdala when it's in full threat mode. The only way out is through behavior. Start small. Neuroscience research shows that even micro-connections can begin to rewire your brain. A genuine smile exchanged with a barista, a brief conversation with a neighbor, a text that goes beyond surface-level pleasantries. These tiny moments of authentic connection start to teach your brain that social interaction isn't always dangerous. The goal isn't to suddenly become extroverted or to force yourself into overwhelming social situations. The goal is exposure therapy for your hypervigilant amygdala. You're teaching your brain, slowly and repeatedly, that connection can be safe. Sarah's turning point came in the most unexpected way. She didn't fix her loneliness through some grand social transformation. She joined a pottery class, not to make friends, but because she needed something to do with her hands. For the first few weeks, she barely spoke to anyone. But slowly, something shifted. The shared activity created what psychologists call parallel connection, being with others without the pressure of direct interaction. She was around people without having to perform. Her threat detection system gradually quieted because there was nothing to detect. No one was demanding vulnerability. No one was forcing connection. After 6 weeks, another student asked her opinion on a glaze color, a simple, low-stakes interaction. Sarah's brain wanted to panic, to shut down, to give a one-word answer and retreat. But she was exhausted from being alone. So she answered honestly. They had a 3-minute conversation about ceramics. That conversation didn't cure her loneliness, but it created a crack in the neurological prison her brain had built. It proved that connection didn't have to end in catastrophe. Over months, not weeks, Sarah slowly rewired her threat detection system. She learned to recognize when her brain was catastrophizing. She learned to distinguish between actual social danger and phantom threats created by her hypervigilant amygdala. Most importantly, she learned that the discomfort of reaching out was temporary, but the pain of isolation was permanent. Here's what the research shows. Breaking the loneliness loop requires approximately 200 hours of shared activity with the same people over several months. That's the threshold where your brain starts recategorizing others as safe, where your amygdala calms down, where your prefrontal cortex comes back online and lets you accurately read social cues again. 200 hours sounds impossible when every social interaction feels like walking on broken glass. But it's cumulative. Coffee once a week for a year, a hobby group that meets twice a month, small, consistent, low-pressure exposure. You're not trying to build deep intimacy immediately. You're trying to retrain your nervous system to stop treating all humans as threats. The neuroscience of recovery is clear. Your brain is plastic. The same mechanisms that trapped you in isolation can free you from it. Every genuine connection, no matter how brief, starts to rebuild the neural pathways that loneliness destroyed. Your amygdala learns to stand down. Your prefrontal cortex regains its ability to accurately interpret social information. Your default network shifts back toward thinking about people instead of ruminating about pain. But you have to feed your brain the evidence it needs. You have to prove to it, through repeated experience, that connection is possible, that people aren't always dangerous, that vulnerability doesn't always lead to devastation. This is the real psychology of loneliness. It's not about being unlikable or socially broken. It's about being trapped in a neurological survival mechanism that's trying to protect you from a threat that no longer exists. Your brain is running ancient software in a modern world, and it's killing you with its attempt to keep you safe. The way out isn't positive thinking or self-help platitudes. It's understanding that your brain is lying to you when it says isolation is safety. It's recognizing that the fear you feel before reaching out isn't intuition, it's malfunction. It's knowing that the discomfort of connection is your nervous system recalibrating, not evidence that you're doing something wrong. Sarah isn't completely healed. She still has days where her brain screams at her to cancel plans, to retreat, to protect herself from phantom threats. But now, she recognizes those thoughts for what they are, echoes of an ancient survival system that doesn't understand the modern world. She has 3 people she can call when it gets bad. She has a weekly pottery class where she doesn't have to pretend to be okay. She has small, consistent connections that prove to her brain, week after week, that she isn't in danger, that she isn't alone. That connection, despite all the risk, is worth it. The loneliness epidemic isn't about weak people failing to make friends. It's about millions of brains stuck in hypervigilance mode, convinced that isolation is survival, completely unaware that they're slowly dying in the process. If you recognize yourself in this story, understand this. Your brain is trying to protect you, but it's using a 10,000-year-old playbook that doesn't work anymore. The threat it's protecting you from doesn't exist, and the isolation it's imposing on you is the real danger. The answer isn't to think differently, it's to behave differently, consistently, until your brain gets new data, until your nervous system learns that the world isn't as dangerous as your loneliness has convinced you it is. Start small. Start today. Reach out to one person, not with the goal of fixing everything, but with the goal of giving your brain one piece of evidence that connection is possible. Because the prison of loneliness has no walls. It's just neural pathways firing in a pattern that keeps you trapped. And the key to that prison is in your hands. If this resonated with you, subscribe to this channel, hit the like button, and comment below with your city. Let's build a community of people breaking free from isolation together.